My Gavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I'm Arakir Gallagher, and the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to a Divide and Conquer faction overview for what will be expected in version 2. We're way now beyond showing you what version 1.2 looks like. These are now just overviews for when version 2 comes out. However, this is going to be the last one for some time. This is twofold. There are only two nations left, Khazad-dûm and the Variags of Khand. And the Variags of Khand script is, whilst being in place, is not completely finished yet. And so I don't want to just show you endless screens of to be done, to be done, to be done. So I'm going to hold off on Khand just until we've got everything set. So Khand's overview will come, but it will be just down the line when they're a bit more polished. Now with Khazad-dûm though, nothing has changed. Now, granted, there probably is like one thing, maybe a unit that we added or something like that, but I don't even think we did that. The Khazad-dûm video that I recorded on the 15th of July 2016, which is in the playlist that these videos are all in, that is basically the same. It's also so much later than the original videos that, I mean, part of the reason why I've redone these is also because my recording setup has improved substantially. My microphone is an awful lot better, and I would suggest my presentation style is just better, so it's just a lot easier to listen to. But Khazad-dûm wasn't on my like £8 headset microphone combo. It was on a better microphone already, so I don't feel like it needs to be improved. I don't think the video is in poor quality. And nothing really has changed to their campaign to merit doing another video. It would just be the same video, but with a different thumbnail. So I'm not going to redo the Khazad-dûm one. So if you want to watch the Khazad-dûm one, just go into the playlist and you'll find them. The playlist is in date order. They are the last of the first round of faction overviews from before. Which means, as I say, this will be the last faction overview now for a considerable amount of time. But also, before I dive into Anduin properly, Melv has created a second changelog video for what we've done so far in version 2. Again, it's a reasonably lengthy one, so do break up your times that you watch it. I do, but obviously you can watch it in one go if you wish. But and the link to that is in the description below, and when I get to remember, I might put it at the end screen as well. But the description has the link. Alright, so there's the information for you. Let's move on to Anduin itself. So what's the size of your domain and the starting army like? Well, Anduin actually get quite a good start, to be honest. From the north, from your castle of Framsberg, down all the way to the borders of Mirkwood at Roskabel, you have 7 regions, I think? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 regions, that's pretty darn good. So you're in a reasonably good position from the outset in terms of size. The army that you can muster at the beginning isn't all that great, though. You've got a couple of units of quite good troops in Framsberg, including Gleerwine. Meithelberg has got some Bjornings there, which are Bjorning warriors as they are now known. And some Woodman trackers, which are kind of your militia archers. In Fenberg and Fordrein, you get hobbits. Now, let me just briefly touch on this. We are well aware that in lore, by this time in 2980 of the Third Age, the hobbits no longer live in the Gladden Fields area. They all went west. They all live in the Shire. There's no hobbits here anymore. But we, as a nod to the fact that there were hobbits here, we've gone with it because it adds a nice little addition to the Anduin roster. Although in the unit removal thread, there's a lot of people asking for one of these 2 hobbit units to be removed. We're not going to remove them. They're going to stay. And there's some generals there. So your army at the start isn't terrible, actually. You could pull together probably quite a sizable army. There's Mats Mikkelsen. You could get quite a sizable army at the beginning to defend your 8 regions. So your leader, your capital, unique bodyguards. Your capital is Selleberg, where you'll also find your leader, Huntmaster Bjorn. Now Bjorn looks like that. Let's get him out in the field so he doesn't bend down. But that is not unique to Bjorn. That is what your faction leader, I believe, always looks like. So there's a standard general and there's a standard captain. And then I believe the faction leader always looks like this. So you can see at a glance where your actual leader is without having to click around and through. So Huntmaster Bjorn has skin changes as his bodyguard. That is not custom. They are the default bodyguard for the Anduin. But they match so well. Your defaults tend to be with the Northmen. So over here in Leotholt, you've got Fastred.
Yes, my lord.
And when I played the Anduin campaign, Fastred and Gleowine were far and away my best generals, because Fastred has archers as his bodyguard, woodman rangers, which makes him very, very useful. And if you are wondering, yes, that is the same gentleman that plays Celeborn of Lorien, but with his natural hair colour rather than the silver hair colour the movie gives him. In the south, you've got Thanagild, also with skin changes. But over in Fenberg and Forodrine, Breeren comes with Stor Hunters, who are archers. And in Forodrine, you've got Folkred.
Yes,
and Folkred comes also with Stor archers. And you can see they have their own custom model as well, showing that they're hobbits, which is Frodo from the... yeah. Magor has skin changes. Your heir, which is called... doesn't have a name, doesn't have a title.
Yes.
Just heir. He has skin changes. And in Framsburg, Gleowine has cavalry. No, he doesn't. We took them away, of course, because... sorry, I took them away. I don't know if you remember, I did an Anduin campaign, and Gleowine almost single-handedly won the north for me because he had a unit of cavalry as his bodyguard, and it was so OP. So we took them away, and he's now got Aethed footmen. So those are all your custom bodyguards. You've got 2 Northman generals, and then everyone else is skin changes except for your 2 Hobbit generals. Now, a little touch upon this as well. Radagast the Brown. Radagast is in the game, and he acts as an emissary, a diplomat for the Anduin. He does not fight. He's not a general. He is the only of the 5 blue wizards now that does not fight. But he's going to remain as a diplomat. He's not going to be a general for the Anduin, because he doesn't fight. Categorically, Radagast does not partake in the War of the Ring. He basically shuns it. He helps Gandalf a couple of times, and he kind of gets used by Saruman a bit, but he doesn't partake, and he kind of just disappears after he sees Gandalf somewhere telling him something, I can't remember what, and then he kind of just falls out of the story. So we're not going to use him as a general, but we've used him as a diplomat because Roscabel is his home, and it's nice to include him, but not in a military capacity. So you get Radagast as an agent. Now your diplomat trains from Celeborg, and it chains from the Carrock, which is, of course, the crossing up here. Now, we've removed, I'll come to that in the map changes, actually, don't worry about that now. So, Rebel expansion, then, where can you go? Well, the only Rebel region is Enethauer, in the centre of the forest, which is what Enethauer literally means. It means Middle Forest. You can also try and beat Dol Guldur to Aknodiorn, but as you can see, at turn 1 already, they're on their way to it. So you will not get there before them, and even if you muster first, you simply won't get there before them. It's their first target in almost every campaign. So your only choice on Rebel regions is Enethauer. So then your neighbours and diplomacy. Well, of course, neighbours first. You've got Lorien on your southwest border, Khazad-dûm on your western border, the Misty Mountains on covering all of your western border, save for that very small southwestern pocket. In the north as well, in the Misty Mountains, you're encircled north and west from them. On the east, you border with the Woodland Realm. And of course, in the southeast, you border Dol Guldur. Now, of these, you are only allied to Khazad-dûm. But you are at war with both of Misty Mountains and Mirkwood. So the elves are currently neutral, as are the Dalians and those of Erebor. They are all neutral. So it's up to you if you want to seize alliances with them or go it alone, as it were. Something that should be said here, which you shouldn't do because it makes the game too simple, but the Misty Mountains are failing on our part, and something I will try and look into. I'm not sure how to do it best, but because they start a war with almost everyone around them, so Imladris, Northern Dunedain, Bree, you, Lorien, Woodland Realm, they're all enemies with them. That's 6 enemies. It means that they're really keen to get a ceasefire, and you can normally charge them around 10,000 gold coins just to get a ceasefire with you. You can then attack them immediately after and rinse and repeat, and it means it's a very stupid little... It's not even a glitch, because the game doesn't think it makes sense. It's just, obviously, it doesn't make sense to a human. You wouldn't pay 10,000 coins for a ceasefire, then get 4, and then pay another 10,000. And then you just do this unending. But it's not necessarily a bug, because it is just using the game's features against it. So I would recommend not doing that, but do note that you can do that. So economy and buildings. Well, of course, then the Anduin, sorry, I was going to call them just Wildmen then, because Wildmen is the next word. The Anduin are a Wildmen faction, and they do not go above city, or large town, sorry, so they don't get city. You don't get city, you don't get large city, and you don't get stronghold, the third tier of castle. But you do now get a castle, and courtesy of the elite dwarf, it looks like that, which is very cool. And Dwinberg down here is what a keep looks like. So this is the first tier of castle for the Wildmen. Obviously, you can't build this one. So anywhere where this model is present is because we've set that in the files that the Wildmen have created this region so that there's a Wildmen keep. But once you upgrade a keep, it will then look like this. So the settlement shifts around the keep a bit more. Apologies if my voice again sounds funny. It's very early in the morning. So you're not going to get the strongest economy because you do not get the top tiers of the cities and the castles. But you do get, I don't think I've included it yet. No, I've not. So something that you will all miss off, unfortunately. But we're going to add to the Anduin a unique building which, to denote the fact that they are renowned beekeepers. Basically, we're going to add an apiary to them. A structure. That is if you didn't know, an apiary is the name of like a bee farm, or I think it's where honey is produced rather than a bee farm. But so in the same way that Dorwinian have now got a unique wine building to show their wine influence, the Anduin are going to get a unique beekeeping and honey building, and it will just give you a little income boost and a trade boost when you build it. So it's just a boost to trade. But that is going to give you at least a little bit more money than your fellow Wildmen factions. If we take a standard town and have a look at your guilds, then you get the Archers Guild, one of the few nations in the game that does get the Archers Guild. I believe only Bree, the Northern Dunedain, Dale, and yourselves get the Hunters Guild, or the Archers Guild. These names are unique to each faction, so for you it's Hunters, Master Hunters, and Elder Hunters. You also get the Horse Breeders Guild, denoting your heritage, your precursor to the Rohirrim. And of course the Aethiod, as you will see once we come onto them, are horsemen through and through, and they're very good cavalry that you are available to you. But those are the only two guilds you get. So, which is interesting, you do not get, which almost every nation does, but the Anduin do not. You don't get the Warriors Guild, the one that increases melee weapons. That one's unavailable to you, so you only get archers and horse breeders. So, as with the Dunland, your money-reducing buildings, or your cost-reducing buildings are Carpenter's Hut and Master Carpenter's Hut. So you will be able to make money, but you won't be able to make tons of money, because you don't get the top two tiers. So then, scripts that affect the Anduin, there are none. Your only scripts, of course, are the garrison script. You'll get the garrison script in all of those starting locations that you can see here. But do note that the Anduin are Northmen, not Wildmen, or Middlemen. So you're Wildmen culture, but you're Northmen religion. Which means you're going to get a garrison. Oh, my dear, my voice is going all over the place. My nose feels like it's filling up. That's too much information, to be honest. I think I'm getting a cold. You're going to get a garrison where Dale gets a garrison. You're going to get a garrison where Bree gets a garrison. No, Bree are the other way around. You're going to get a garrison in Dale, Rohan, and Dorwinian. Those are the places you're going to get garrisons. You will not get garrisons in Dunland or Bree, because they are middlemen religion. Got there in the end. Nor will you get one in Enedwaith. But that's it. There aren't any scripts for the Anduin at all, I'm afraid. There's no Radagast-related scripts. There's there's nothing. So, script light, one of the game's only, or possibly only. I think everyone else at least has one, or at least has a script that affects them. But the Anduin don't. There's nothing you can do to trigger a script, and no one does anything to you to trigger a script. So then, on to main map changes. Well, one of the biggest map changes, which may not be apparent to many of you, but will affect your games in certain ways, is that we've removed all of the little islands that were crossing points of the Anduin. And this is because the Anduin is actually counted as the sea. It's not a river, it's the ocean. So to do crossings on it, you only need to have a land bridge. A land bridge is an invisible crossing, much like at the mouths of the Anduin. And also, where's a famous land bridge? Around here. Up here near the... Oh, that's an actual river crossing. But Car Andros as well. This one's a river, but this side is obviously just crossing across the sea. So there doesn't need to visibly be anything to cross the river, but for some reason Firefreak put actual islands in the sea, in the river we'll call it, to show where you crossed. Now the only downside with that was it meant that the trade was restricted, so this port could only trade with this port and would never go beyond, and of course you would not be able to sail the northern part of the Anduin at all. Now of course you can't really sail it now either, because once one of these ports is built, you'll never be able to get past unless you control that port. Now that isn't a problem for the Anduin because you will control almost all of the river, so you'll be able to sail most likely from the north down to the south, although I don't actually think that you can build boats. So no, you can't sail it. But if a nation who can build boats comes and takes this region, they can at least sail from the north of the river all the way down to Aknodion and beyond, providing they have all of the ports along the river. So it's a minor change, but it just also means that there's no islands in the sea. You can also see where you can cross the river by obviously clicking on a general is one of the ways, and if you hold down the right mouse button, you can drag lines as to where they're going to go. So you can see you can cross just south of Sellerberg, and you can cross at the Karok there. Now we need another general to go up here. Now for the northern part, you've got to cross the actual river here. This is another one of the map changes. Many of you used to say that there used to be a river crossing just here, and it crashed the game an awful lot because when you fought on that river crossing, the sides on each bank were impassable. So your units, you couldn't place units, and you couldn't actually fight the battle. It was bugged. So I reduced the size of the ocean, brought this ocean down here, and put the river crossing on the flat rather than on the hill. So that now shouldn't affect it. So the crossings are at that river just there, north of Framsberg, across the Karok, just south of Sellerberg, where the fort is. The forts tend to denote river crossings now.
Orders.
So there's no other crossing up. There's that fort there, and the next one is all the way down here next to this fort.
As you wish.
So you can defend against Dol Guldur if they take the eastern side by holding here, in south of Forodrine, and holding here, just south of Sellerberg. And then, of course, Meithelberg protects the Karok, and Framsberg protects the northern side. Ah, forgive me, I've sniffed. Righty-ho. Also from 0.52, although I'm not sure, it might have been there already. Dwinberg, of course, has been added, as has Enethauer. So these are both new if you're playing on 0.52, but they're not new if you're playing on 1.2. Oh, my word. Tips and difficulty. Final setting. Now, the Anduin Hummingbird stands by that they're quite a tricky nation if you don't cheat the Misty Mountains for ceasefire. If you stay at war with both Misty and Dol Guldur, you're in for a real fight. However, if you get a ceasefire with the Misty, then it's going to be a doddle, because Dol Guldur has you and Lorien coming down on it, and the Woodland Realm, and likely Dale, and they just won't be able to hold. But if you keep at war with the Misty Mountains as well, you are the Misty Mountains' chief enemy. So of all the enemies that they do have, they will go for you the most. So you do need to be careful if you do decide to fight both of them, because they will come at you with outrageous size and force. And of course they border you on all sides, so they really will come out of nowhere. But as we'll see when we move on to the unit side now, you have some ways of dealing with the Misty Mountains with some heavily defensive units, and of course your outrageously powerful skin changes. But for the battle map side, or the campaign map side, that concludes for now. So as ever, I will see you on the battle map side. Welcome to the battle map side. So a quick overview of the Anduin shows you that they are a very well-rounded roster, yet early game. So again, with the units are lined up where their stats are rather than where I categorically know that they're barracks event or not. But the units that where I would suggest the barracks event is the large gap behind that you can see in the middle. Now, I'm fairly certain that is where the barracks event is in this case as well. So a large chunk of your force is available before the barracks event, with only a few minor additions afterwards. However, as stated originally, as you can see, they're very well rounded. You've got 3 options for cavalry, a lot of options down the middle in infantry, and quite a lot of archers as well, actually. Also note that of the infantry, 2 of them are javelin men. So you've also got a couple of javelins. So very nice, well-rounded roster. The Anduin roster as well, there's quite a few units that can ambush. They are very much a hybrid between Enid Wythe and Dunland. So Dunland have kind of the strength and almost aggression. Their units tend to have quite high attack, and with their link to Saruman, they get some good defense, which is a break to the law, but we're going for it. And the Enedwythians are all about ambushing, so almost all of their units can hide anywhere. Almost all of their units at least can hide very well in forests, which means like they can hide even if there's just one tree. And loads of them are ranged. They've got lots of javelin options and a lot of archer options. Whereas the Anduin are hybrid between the two. Their aggressive units are really very aggressive. Their defensive units are very defensive, and they've got a lot of ranged options. So they're very much a normal faction, with the only caveat being that not very much comes after the barracks event. So that's a sort of overview of the Anduin. So, not many new units at all, but a couple of respect units. A lot of units have had new, either their look has changed, their design has changed, or possibly their weapons have changed, but I don't think anything's really new. I will also just say that the Valesmen here are being reworked. They are no longer going to look like basically blacksmiths with a shield and a spear. They're going to be respect a bit. I believe that's on Hummingbird's to-do list because they just don't really fit. They look like that because they used to be called farmers and they used to just have a pitchfork, and that was all they went to war with. But we've since actually given them reasonably passable stats, and it no longer matches that they're like peasant people. So their name will remain the same, but they probably will get a look similar to the warriors or the wardens. Right, so let's go through the stats then. So entry level, your 3 absolute militia tier, or well, you've got 2 absolute and then 1, but they're useful in their own ways, are the store. So the stores can hide anywhere, as you can see, they're hiding in the long grass, and this first one throws rocks. These are effective against armor, and they get a lot of them, which is very useful. They get 50 missiles. In fact, they're the unit that has the most missiles in the whole game. So they can throw stones almost non-stop in every battle. Now the stones, because they're effective against armor, they do actually do more damage than you think if this unit isn't engaged in melee, because as you can see, its stats are abysmal. 1 for everything. Similarly, the store hunters, 1 for everything except the store hunters get an extra defense point and an extra damage on their missile. So they're passable archers, but both of these are going to die so easily once they actually come into battle. But they are still cool units, and I really enjoy playing with them, so we're not going to cut them. But also this earlier tier then are the Valesmen. Now, as I say, they've since been buffed. They used to be the same sort of stats as the store hunters. We couldn't justify that a hobbit and a human had the same sort of defense and aggression stats when there's quite a sizable size and aggression difference between the two races. So these have since been bumped up. Their attack's higher, their charge is better, their defense is now 6. These are available everywhere. Poor everything else. It should be noted that the store are only available in Fenberg and Forradrine. Right, so we come on to your main troops then. First of all, we'll start with the Wardens on the right-hand side. This is where you've got more supplemental archers and cavalry. So, the Wooden Wardens can hide anywhere and throw javelins. So, very much an Enedwythe unit borrowed by the Anduin. Their missile attack is 10, melee 8, 14 defense. It's very good for that sort of middle tier. But do note that these may well come after the barracks event. They just match up in stats with all of these units. So those are the Wardens. Now supporting them are the respect defenders. In version 1.2, I believe the defenders either use the halberd animation or they used a spear rather than a pike. But Hummingbird has since made them a dedicated pure pike unit. They have a very long weapon, as you can see now. And so they're just pike units, which is why their defense and attacks is lower than the units that are in the same tier as them. But obviously, adding in the pike animation, they are beasts. But they do require a Vale region, which is basically the 8 starting regions that you begin the game with. Although I think Rakjeberg is also counted as a Vale region if you take that from the Isti Mountains. So these only come from your heartland, but they're there as a defense to hold back the orcs of the Misty Mountains. But speaking of defense, we come onto the unit which is kind of the quintessential. I've always thought of this unit as being the unit that most sums up the passage from the book that says that the Bjornings or the Valesmen are stout defenders and they've held open the passages of the Misty Mountains. And this unit is basically created out of that passage. So it's got an outrageously large shield with a 6 shield stat. I think that might be one of the highest shield stats that is present in the game. Their overall defense is 15, but they do pay for that with a lower attack than would normally be a level with a unit that has a 15 defense. So they've got a very high defense, but they pay for it a bit with a lack of aggression. But their morale is good, and their morale response is average. So good morale means that they will hold for quite some time. They're just really good defensive units. They will hold. They won't kill much, but they will hold. That's kind of the point. You use your wardens and you use these gentlemen, the warriors, to do the killing for you. Now, the warriors have a 6 attack. They can hide anywhere. Their defense is only 9, but still, it's not too bad. So they're ambush flanking units. Get them out of the way of the main line. Get them onto your flanks. They can hide anywhere at all times. And then the enemy will then engage your Bjorning defenders, and then you spring your trap, and your wardens and your warriors both pop out of nowhere and come and flank, and the battle is over. You can also substitute the shield bearers for the defenders if you wish to, and that will also work the same way. But that's basically the Anduin's plan at the mid-tier. You've got a really good pike unit and a really strong defensive unit to hold the line, and then your 2 aggressive units just pop out of nowhere and bring the enemy down. And that's how it's all done. However, if you cannot use ambush, then you do have another very formidable option for the flanking infantry, and that's the Bjorning warriors. Bjorning warriors are effective against armor. They frighten nearby enemy infantry. They have an 8 attack. They are very good berserker units, and they are no longer restricted to the Vale. They're now available everywhere. They're just really, really powerful flanking units. So again, either ambush the enemy or attack them with the warriors while the defenders, or the shield bearers and the defenders are holding the line. But supporting you at this tier are your first dedicated archer, and again, a hide anywhere unit, the Woodman Trackers. Their missile is 4, which is quite good. That's up there with the Hunters of Bree. And their defense is 6, whereas the Hunters is 2, I think. So they're not too bad once the melee starts, but they are still archers. So golden rule, if you've never played Medieval 2, archers should never get into battle unless one of the following happens. They run out of arrows, and you absolutely need them. And even then, those two should be taken together, not separately. So try and keep them out of combat at all times. They can hide anywhere. Reliable in woods, as you might imagine. Their morale is average, morale response is average. So the shield bearers have the best morale at this tier, bar possibly the defenders. Did they have good morale as well? Yeah, warriors have good morale as well. Right, and this is where your cavalry then also joins the fray. The Anduin gets 2 units at this first tier. You've got Bjorning Riders and the Aethiode Horse Archers. So, Bjorning Riders first. Bjorning Riders are just dependable charge cavalry. They're a little bit better than your Rohan scouts, who shouldn't really ever get in battle and should just ride down fleeing units. But the Bjorning Riders can actually do a solid attack on the charge. With a 6 charge bonus, their attack is 3 and the defense is 10. Now, the defense for a charging cavalry is not necessarily used to decide how long do you keep it in melee for, because you don't want to keep it in melee really at all. But obviously, when a cavalry unit charges an enemy unit, they do actually take damage back. So having a high defense means that they're very unlikely to die in their own charge, which is useful. And you've also got the Aethiode Horse Archers. Now, this is the first unit that uses the I don't know what this would be, the title descriptor. I'm not sure what the because obviously we've got Bjorning, we've got Aethiode, we've got Stor, we've got Vale, and Woodman. So, but anyway, so the Aethiode Horse Archers, their defense is 14, their melee is 6, charge is 6, and they do 5 missile damage. They are good, very good horse archer cav. And getting them into the army is very, very useful, of course, because going with the same theory, you've got the defenders and shield bearers holding the line. You've got your ambushes ready to strike with the flank, your warriors already running around on the flank in so that they time with the warriors. You've got your archers peppering the enemy, and then above all that, running behind the enemy lines, hitting deep into their number, are your horse archers spraying hell upon the enemy from within their own ranks. So it's all very defensive orientated with ways to kill. You don't the reason I say that is because you don't really have a direct aggressive unit. Like a unit that's got a high defense with a high attack and can do everything. Even at the later stages of the game, like with your Karok when they come in and things like that, your units are still either very aggressive or very defensive. You don't really have any hybrids. Like, for example, Gondor has the Wardens of the White Tower, who have a high attack and a high defense. Dol Amroth has Talon Knights. Everything in Imladris is a hybrid. You don't really have that. You're either defensive or you're aggressive. So you kind of got your units to fill these roles. Right, so after the barracks event, for some of these, some of them may come before, but their stats are after. These are your dedicated mainline elites, and they are the Aethiode. The Aethiode are just dependable troops. Now, as I say, there's no real hybrid, and again, these shine a little bit better in defense than they do in attack, but they are the closest thing you've got to a hybrid attack defense unit. And they used to be restricted, but they are no longer. You can now train them anywhere. Now, their morale is only good. Their morale response is only good. This is your elite, and its morale is only good. So the Valesmen, you might find your army breaking if you don't have a general. But with a 19 defense and an 8 attack, these spearmen will do well. Of course, they're spearmen. Any spear unit always gets a bonus against any type of mount. Now, supporting them and another AOR unit, restricted, but the only other infantry at this late tier are the Karok Guard. Now, this unit is one that's been respec'd, as you can see. The Karok Guard used to be the following: smaller, have a javelin, have wings on their helmets, and they swapped to a axe and a shield when they finished with their javelins, I think. But they have since lost many of those things, and they now look far, far better. They are slightly larger than, or they may not be slightly larger, but they certainly look to be bulkier, more padded out than, like, they look more like the skin changes in size and height, and but they are noticeably taller than the Aethiode. They've now got a two-handed axe rather than a single-handed axe and a shield. They no longer have javelins, but they are still restricted to Meithelberg and Sellerberg. So these are the only two places where you can train them. Their morale is very good. Their defense is 20 and their attack is 10 with an 8 charge. And they inspire nearby troops. They're effective against armor. And interestingly, this is the Anduin stake placing unit, because I am in such... I don't know why, but I love melee units being the units that place stakes. I just think that, that makes so much more sense, because then you can have your units place stakes further away and not have to worry about running your archers back at the start of the battle. You can just walk your melee troops back knowing they'll survive on their own, whereas archers tend to go down if they go into melee. So I like melee troops being the stake deployment forces, and the Karok Guard are the Anduin stake unit. So I mean, you rarely get stakes because this unit is quite rare. Late game, only in 2 regions, highest barracks level, all that. So, but they are really, really aggressive strike infantry, and with that defense of 20 as well, they're not going to die very easily. They are an outrageously good unit, but they're just really rare. So you won't get very many of them in a campaign. And that is how unit balancing works for people that play just custom battles and always tell us how broken the balancing is. This is a perfect example of how to take everything about a unit to decide how it's balanced. This unit is so rare. You will probably get maybe 5 maximum in a 250 turn long campaign. 5. You could get 5 of these units. So they're outrageously good for with their stats. They're going to kill anything that comes up against them. They're effective against mounts as well. They are literal slayers of anything that comes near them. But you only get 5 of them, and they will not replenish automatically. So that is how balancing works, boys and girls. Right, so supporting your infantry at this tier, we'll start with the cavalry because there's only one of them. The Aethiode Cavalry. The Aethiode are obviously not as good as anything that Rohan can provide, but they are still powerful cavalry. It's 17 defense, 6 attack, and 11 charge, which is quite good. Plus, they get a bonus against other cavalry, which is always useful on cavalry, because the AI is very fond of shutting your cavalry down with its own cavalry. So to have your cavalry be effective against all cavalry is a huge bonus. And those of you that have been watching the Rune campaign will note our Easterling bodyguard is taking down the Dorwinian bodyguard time and time again because it has a bonus against other cavalry, which the Dorwinian bodyguard does not have. So it's not to be underestimated, a cavalry unit that's bonus against other cavalry. Also, I know that your brain may not think it, but do note that a cavalry unit does get the charge bonus when it charges another cavalry unit. So although I don't know why my brain doesn't think of it the same. I think it's because when cavalry charges infantry, they plow deep into the enemy line, they knock down everything in their way. But when cavalry charges cavalry, they just kind of mix together. But do note that the charge bonus is still taken into effect. So these are very good against other cavalry with a high charge and that bonus, that hidden bonus. Right, also supporting you at this tier are 2 similar yet different units, the Rangers and the Aethiode Longbowmen. So we'll start with the Longbowmen because they're more dedicated. So the Aethiode Longbowmen are just good archers. Again, their stats in terms of melee are not that great, but their missile attack is 6, which is the same missile attack level as human Rangers. Their range is also 190 meters, which is slightly longer than units of this tier for almost anyone else, and that's basically just because it's one of the only units in the game called longbowmen, and I wanted that to be reflected, that they fire a bit further than everyone else. But once they do get into melee, they aren't obviously that great, and you do need to be cautious. 11 defense, 5 melee. I mean, they're not going to die straight away, but they're also not going to win any awards. One of my favourite sayings for these unit videos. But they are supported with the Woodman Rangers. Now, Woodman Rangers have, again, a 6 missile attack because they are Rangers. They have all the stats of Rangers. So 220 meters, very high accuracy, 32 missiles. Their defense is 12 and their melee attack is 7. So they are just basically an all-round better version of the 3rd Longbowmen. The only difference being that the Woodman Rangers only come from Mirkwood or a Mirkwood border region. Now what this means is any region that is completely within Mirkwood will train these Rangers, but also the surrounding border of Mirkwood. So you'll get them in like Rakuberg, you'll get them in Sellerberg, Dwinberg, Roskabel, probably Achnodiorn. Moving around, you'd get them in whatever that first Burr town is, and then the next one, and then the Blight area. You get them on the borders, and you get them in Mirkwood. So they are rarer than the Longbowmen, which is why the Longbowmen are your default unit, your default archer unit. I also believe that... No, I'm not. No, I don't believe anything. I was going to say, I think this one comes in a later archery tier, but I don't think it does. They come in the same archery building. Oh, I didn't talk about that with the Wildmen, did I? Ah, bugger. Of course, do note that you are Wildmen. You... This is late, but here we are. You do not get a barracks, a stables, nor an archery range. Instead, you get a single building that trains everything. However, it comes in 3 tiers. So your first tier will unlock all of your pre-barracks event ground infantry. The second tier will unlock your pre-barracks event cavalry and archers. They come in the second tier of the building. But it's a cheaper tier. So the building doesn't get more expensive. It actually gets cheaper for the second tier and then gets more expensive for the third. And then the third tier brings all of your post-barracks event units. So the Wildmen get their units much easier because you just have a single building to build and then you only have to upgrade it once. Whereas everyone else has 3 buildings to build and then normally 2 or 3 upgrades on that. Or 1 or 2 upgrades on that. So your units train easier. I believe I covered that in Ennard Wyeth and Dunland's video, possibly. I don't think I even mentioned it in Dunland's video. Ah, stupid. Right, so finally then, your bodyguard and the Sylvan March Wardens. The Sylvan March Wardens are not your bodyguard, but they are the only kind of script-ish thing that I could mention. They're not a script at all, they are just trainable, but they are elves. Elves come to support the Anduin. And they have elven stats. So their missile is 9, 3 better than your best ranged unit. Their defense is 13. Their melee attack is 10. They are dependable in all senses of the word. But they only come from Amun Lank. So it's basically a nod to say that you have cleansed Dol Guldur, and so both Lorien and the Woodland Realm thank you for this, and they have sent you this unit, which is why they're called Sylvan. Because, for those of you that don't know, for the Woodland Realm and Lorien, like 90% of the population are Sylvan elves. They are only ruled by Sindar elves. So when the Sindar fled Beleriand, they came amongst the Woodland Realm and they came amongst Lorien, which were already existing Sylvan realms. And the Sylvan looked up to them quite rightly because there's kind of a hierarchy in who got closest to the trees. And where you are on the scale puts you in greater, like you're just more knowledgeable, you're better, basically. And so the Sylvan took them on as their lords. So the Sindar rule the Woodland Realm. Thranduil is a Sindarin elf. Celeborn is a Sindar elf. Galadriel, of course, is a Noldorin elf with blood of all 3 Noldor houses within her. So they took them on as their leaders, but the bulk of the people are Sylvan, which is why these are called Sylvan March Wardens, because they reflect both Lorien and the Woodland Realm. And they're only available in Amun Lank. So once you take Amun Lank, you get a really good archer unit, which is always a nice little addition. Right, and finally then, the skin changes. One of the units that makes Anduin incredibly unique. You've got an outrageous bodyguard. Now, many of you will already know about skin changes, so feel free to just skip to the battle bit if you wish. But the skin changes are just bosses, absolute bosses. Their attack is 24. You're not misreading that. It's 24. They're effective against armor. They are effective against all mounts. They frighten nearby enemy infantry. Their morale is excellent. Morale response is good. Their total defense is 17, and they have 2 hit points. So I suppose their biggest failing is that their defense is actually quite average. And do note they've got no shield and only 6 armor, so they are very vulnerable to arrow fire, as you might imagine. A gentleman wearing nothing but a skirt running into battle. He's probably not going to take too many arrows to the chest before he finally does capitulate. But they do get 2 hit points, so they got to be killed twice, basically. And they're really, really powerful. They really are powerful. Really strong units. And as you can see, they've also been edited quite substantially since their original iteration, with the basically where they look like they're wearing bushes on their head. Hummingbird has given them much better hair. They've also got a powerful charge, but that's just because their charge bonus is really high. They're just really aggressive, but you do want to try and use them on the flank rather than as dedicated line infantry, because they will suffer from one key thing, and that is stun locking. There are only 32 of them, so if they get completely surrounded by lots and lots and lots of units, say the hordes of Dol Guldur, or indeed the hordes of Misty Mountains, then they can suffer from the stun lock problem that the game has, where a unit is attacked so much that the game is registering all of his, like, oh, I've been hit animations before it can register an I'm attacking animation. And it then just means they are locked in the I've been hit, I've been hit, I've been hit, I've been hit, and then they die. And this is a reason why you can't have a really, 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 really powerful but tiny battalion of, like, Imladris warriors, which is always asked for. It's one of the go-to requests, is can we have a unit of Imladris that has, like, 10 men, but they do, like, 50 damage? And it's like, yes, you can, but they'll actually do sod all, because they will just get killed by even Snagger, who will just routinely surround them, stun lock them, and kill them. So you do have to be careful with the skin changes. They've got 32, so they're not tiny, but it is enough that they can be overwhelmed, so do be cautious. Also, before we go into the battle side, I will just note, because a lot of people do mention it, you will note that when some of them turn their heads, you can see their shoulder through their hair. Now, do note that there's not really much that we can do about this. This game is very, very old. There are going to be little bugs and glitches like that, and we can't really resolve it. So things like that are not bugs really to be reported, because we're not going to be able to change them. You'd need to change the engine. Because of the way that the unit is created and generated, it's like there's always going to be bits where they clip through themselves. Like, for example, this gentleman here, you can see through his shoulder completely. Like there. And there's always going to be bits where they clip. So do just look out for that. But also don't report that, because we're well aware, and if we can fix it, we will. Alright, so let's group everyone up, give them all to the AI, turn everything off, and start the battle. So we are up against Canned. I'm not going to play the game, because obviously Canned's the only one left now, because I'm not going to do the Khazad-dûm one, as I said at the beginning. But of course, the Canned overview will not come for some time. Not until we've polished off the scripting side of their campaign. Although you'll be seeing all of the Candish version 2 units in my current Easterling campaign and the Bree campaign if we make it to Canned, because all of these units were present long before I started those campaigns. But there's the Candish main force. As you can see, like, Zarathos did make them look... He basically ripped units straight out of Shogun Total War and out of a Chinese mod for another game, and he plopped them in. So they were really, really Oriental inspired. But to keep a sort of nod to that, we've kept the back flags, which are very, very, very reminiscent of Japanese fighting. In fact, I don't think any... I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a main culture that fought with flags on the back of every man, other than the Japanese. I can't think of any other nation that did that. So, but they've kept that, but they've also now, obviously, as you can see, got a far more sort of, like, nomadic feel to them. Save for 1 or 2 units which have still got their heavy hitting. Now, of course, Canned are very much a cavalry faction, although the game here has given them, like, no cavalry. Like, from looking at this video, you're going to think they're all infantry. But they're not. They've got lots of cavalry. I think they're 50% cavalry, 50% infantry. And of that 50% cavalry, like 25% of that is... they've got something like 4 horse archer units or 3 horse archer units. They are the game's horse archer faction. Oh, Carrot Guard, no. And, of course, I just auto-filled the Candice army, so we will lose, because none of my troops have defense, none of them have armor upgrades, none of them have experience, melee weapon upgrades, whereas all the Candice troops do. There's the Variag Cataphract. Now, it's called a Cataphract, yes, just because that's a well-known name for a heavy-hitting horse, but it's not a direct cataphract from the Greek kataphractoi, whatever that means. It doesn't take that kind of role. It's just a good charge cavalry in the mid-tier of Khand, as we'll see when we come to their overview in a few weeks' time. The Brotherhood of the Sword still fighting on. Brotherhood of the Axe. I'm really with the high level of detail that Hummingbird has since brought to the Khandish force. I am really of the opinion now that the 4 Brotherhood units just do not fit. I'm not really sold on their armor. It's one of the last remaining armors from the original DaC team that we haven't really changed. I mean, Hummingbird has improved it, but we've not really changed it. And to be honest, I'm not sold on them anymore. The rest of the Khandish army has a link, has a uniformity. They all look rather nomadic. Many of them have the flags on the back. They've got a theme running through them. And then out of nowhere come these black armor wielding, black armed and armored, black armor wearing gentlemen. And all of the 4 names as well. The Brotherhood. I don't think Khand would call them something like that. The other things are all called like Nomad or just Variag warriors. And then you've got Brotherhood of the Axe. I think a name change and perhaps a design change is in order. Something that I would very much, as I've discussed this in one of the rune videos, I'd very much like their armor to match more this silver horse, because the silver horse is very much the Khandish horse. Now I've stole it and borrowed it for Dorwinion, but this is the kind of Khandish cataphract horse compared to the golden one of Rune, because they share a border. They are almost one and the same nation. Look at that horse archer horde running across the battlefield. There's bloody millions of them. I really like Khand. They are actually one of my favourite factions. I know that sounds so paradoxical because I voted to remove them, but I do really like them. See, that horse would go better with the Brotherhood unit, but that quality of that horse doesn't look that great. I mean, the Brotherhood of the Bow have that horse wherever they are. There they are, running in and amongst there. I think maybe the Cataphracts should take the better actual Cataphract horse, and the 2 Brotherhood units should have that black mount. I can edit the stats so that they're kind of on a par. Anyway, that's Khand, and that was Anduin. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's given you something new, and I hope you've enjoyed this series of version 2/version 1.2 changes for Divide and Conquer. I will now depart these lands, ne'er to return, save for the Khand overview, whenever that will be. Now, as I say, the Khandish overview, I will just wait. Version 2 is still ages away. We're not even thinking of releasing in 2017. So we're miles away. So I will save the Khandish overview for when we've really nailed Khand down, so I can talk about it completely, because they've been so massively overhauled that the video will be a little bit longer. And I really would, like, if Hummingbird is listening, I'll contact you separately anyway. I really think it is time maybe to make the 4 Brotherhood units fit the theme of Khand a bit better. I don't really know how. I've got no ideas at the moment, but all I know is that I don't think that unit really fits with them anymore. And I think it could do with being changed. Perhaps we could steal one of the rune units and respec it a bit. Anyway, I shouldn't talk about that in the video. For now, that will be all. So thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have. Please do head over to Melv's video and check out the changelog for version 2. Oh, we actually ended this time. Damn! And until we speak again, dear friends, Navar Naden Penimad Melonin, and farewell.